Welcome to Project Insight's Professional Development Series. Today's session, the AI Governance Playbook for PMO Leaders, focuses on a challenge many organizations are facing right now. AI is happening across our business, but it's often without clear processes for managing it. Teams are experimenting with different tools and use cases, while PMOs struggle to understand what's being used, prioritize this, and even understand the risks involved. Today, we'll look at how PMOs can bring structure and governance to AI initiatives without slowing the innovation down. A few housekeeping notes. Everyone will be on mute. Please feel free to use the chat as we go. This session will be good for one PDU certificate, but you must attend until the end of the session to get the QR code. And if you are joining via this recording link, you can rewatch this video at any point here. Today, we're going to be learning from Steve West, CEO of Project Insight, who has spent more than 2 decades helping organizations centralize project, program, and portfolio data into one backbone to support better decision making. And we're joined by PMO entrepreneur, CEO of Parwaaz Consulting, and a Project Insight partner, Hussain Bandukwala. Hussain, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you, Matthew?
Good. Thanks for being here with Steve and I. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about your story with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do that. I've been in the space for about 20 odd years. I've been helping organizations set up PMOs, optimize them, resurrect them, rebrand them. It's a lot of opportunity here for PMOs to really take on the AI wave that's coming down, which we'll talk more about shortly. But I've had the pleasure of working with Fortune 500 organizations, private equity-backed companies as well, and helping them achieve the goals that they need to go ahead and get the right things done in the right way at the right time with the right people. And that's what I think PMOs are all about.
Yeah, I think Steve would agree. I know I do as far as that's concerned. I may not have all of those necessary skill sets, but like you said, get the right people together so we can move it forward, right? So we're really excited to go through this with you. So
yeah, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And thank you so much for having me here. I know it's our first time together to this webinar, so I'm really excited and looking forward to it. So with that, should I take it away?
Yeah, please.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
All right. So thanks so much for setting up the context here, Matthew. It's really, really helpful, right? And I know in this age of AI, we've got a lot of things going on, and I'm speaking to a lot of different organizations who are at different ends of the maturity curve, right? There are organizations who are coming to me and saying, well, you know what? We know AI is here. We know we need to work on it. We know we need to get going, but we can't wait for another 2 years to figure it out. Can you help us with that, right? That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum that I'm really seeing is that we've got AI going on. We need to go ahead and get a handle of it, right? We need to figure out what to take, what not to take, how to put in guardrails, how to govern it, how to prioritize it. Do we need to have the same life cycle for AI initiatives as we do for other projects? Or do we keep it different? How can we figure that out? And so those are really, really interesting conversations that I'm having. And I'd love to see Matthew and Steve, if folks who joined us, I'd love to hear from them in the comments. Where are they in the spectrum? Are they still trying to get onto AI, figuring out where they are, or are they on the other end of the spectrum where AI is happening, but really sort of in the messy middle, if you will? So if in the comments, people can just go ahead and type in, early on or middle or later on, I think that would be really, really helpful. I'd love to see what we've got going on here.
What our results look like. Yeah, we'll share those as they come up. I think, anecdotally, Steve and I could share that I think we see a lot of that middle of the road piece, for like you do on a lot of applications, right? Where you have these individual teams, like you're saying, where we're using these or I'm doing this to make my life better without that big oversight, like you're talking
Yeah.
about, right? It's kind of really this, or, and I think, Steve, maybe you could talk to this point of the organizations who aren't doing anything because they're still not sure, right? It's a hard no on everything.
I think that the organizations that I've run across that are maybe not adopting as aggressively are ones that have high security, or you're doing government work and there's a lot more concern over security. But in the grand scheme of things, we're all just beginning here. So, but as far as in the beginning, a lot of people have done a lot. I know we all have done a lot, but I mean, I would say that there's still so much ground going forward from here. It'll be an ongoing process to continue to move towards the end or the end.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, and from what I'm seeing on the chat here as well, is a lot of people are in that, we've got it going, but, it's an interesting point that you mentioned, Steve, is the end. We don't even know what that end is,
Right.
right? Like, is it, multiple agentic use doing everything? Is it something else? Is it going to evolve with time? But to your point, right now at the starting, or sort of earlier in the start, as you like to say, we've got people who are using different AI tools for different reasons, right? We've got folks from finance who could be using Copilot for reporting. Might have the marketing team, running ChatGPT for content. We might have operations who signed up a tool that nobody's ever seen or heard about. The PMO itself might be looking at some tools or has already explored using some of these tools. But the reality is that the bigger picture here is not around AI, it's not around technology, it's not around IT, it's really around governance. And that's really an opportunity for PMOs to think about, okay, how do I use AI for my betterment and for the betterment of projects? But beyond that, how can I actually help the organization take a control over all of this? And that's what I'd really love to talk more about today, right? And so with governance, it's not about should we use AI. Everybody knows that, right? We have got to get onto it. But who decides what we pursue? What is the order in which it should be pursued? Is legal going to be involved right now? Is HR going to be involved right now? Do we need to worry about ethics? Do we need to worry about other things? It all depends on what it is that we want to use AI for. Have we even thought about that? Who is thinking about all of it? Right? So putting that whole thing into play is really about governance, which is extremely in the wheelhouse of PMOs. And so are PMOs taking the opportunity to take a leadership role on this, right? And what's even worse than that, what I feel is, without the PMO getting involved, if you have everybody doing their own little thing, you get invest time, effort, energy to look at tools, to look at situations, you pilot them out, and it's a great pilot, but after that, nothing happens. Or you might have the marketing team, the finance team, the operations team, the PMO team, the legal team, the HR team, all spending on the same tool multiple times, right? That's the duplicate spend that no organization wants. And of course, the whole compliance surprise is the piece that people are really concerned about, which is what is a biggest prohibitor for any organization to start even thinking about AI. They're like, well, let's not open that can of worms right now. Let's just like push it down push it down the lane, and we can figure it out later, right? And so, in order to captivate AI, that is what we want to do. And what I think the PMOs should do, and what I want to talk about today, is first figure out what are the opportunities that PMO has to grapple AI and lead the charge in becoming an AI first PMO. Once it's achieved that, it takes that same playbook, that same approach, and runs it across finance, runs it across ops, runs it across all other departments, and helps the organization become, even if it's not an AI first entity or the aspirations to become an AI first entity, it can at least go ahead and come up with a very systematic, methodical approach to really taking on and capitalizing on the opportunities that AI has without compliance risks, without overspending, um, without any other concerns that organization may have. Because the reality is that if it's not happened with your organization right now, tomorrow the CEO will say, "We want to think AI." Tomorrow you may have a chief AI officer who's been brought in. And so what happens? If they come into play, they'll start doing things their own way. And the PMO has lost the opportunity to take that leadership role. Even worse, if somebody comes in and does something, it goes awry, the PMO will probably just then be called to clean up the mess, and
Right.
somebody else will take the credit for it. And
Yeah.
so, sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, no. I mean, I think you were making a great point there that if, getting back to what you were saying before, um, these PMOs, if they don't get involved now, you're just going to be out of the loop and have to deal with all of this after the fact.
Yeah, and PMO keeps on talking about, hey, how do we get onto the strategic table? How do we, sit shoulder to shoulder with C-level execs? This is the opportunity, right?
Hmm.
If you don't take that opportunity with both hands, somebody else will take it away from you, right? So if nothing's happening in your organization, take the charge. If the situation that I talked about earlier, where different departments are doing their own different things, that's exactly where a PMO comes into play. Remember, that's why the PMO was created in the first place, where different projects were happening in different ways, and you need to bring in a consistent, standardized, methodical way of running projects. And here, AI is no different, right? And so that's the playbook that I really want to talk to you about. And it's not going to be a voila moment, to be honest, with all of you. This is an area that PMOs, that all of you already know, but it's really about doing a mindset reframe of how you want to think about applying this to AI. The question is, could it be applied to AI? And the answer is yes, it definitely can. And that's what you should be doing, right? So, looking at these 5 moves of the playbook, we'll take a bit of a deeper approach and looking at intake, prioritization, governance, delivery, and then, of course, repeating it as we go,
Yeah,
right?
and I think in the beginning you mentioned, in the last slide, you mentioned, what do we want to get out of AI? I mean, that's a really great question. I think, and I read in the audience the various different things. Some people are full on. Some companies I read in there that they have an AI steering committee, and hopefully the PMO is involved in that process. But how do you even get what all those goals are?
That's exactly right. And who figures that out, right?
Right.
So if you think of a general project portfolio, you have an organizational's strategic pillars that get broken down into goals and objectives, that get broken down into a list of projects, uh, and then that list of projects that needs to be prioritized, right? And so AI here is no different. The only difference here is that over there, the board and the executive level is coming up with the strategic plan that needs to be disseminated into a list of projects. Here it might be the AI committee, right? But the success of any organization in meeting its strategic goals is is where the gap between execution and strategy is covered. And that's where typically a PMO comes into place, right? And that's exactly the gap that we're trying to cover here with AI initiatives. where the AI committee is coming up with all these different things that it wants to do. Well, can we do it? Do we have the money? Do we have the people? Do we have the data? Do we have the guardrails? Do we have the skill set? And if we don't, how do you bring them in? If you start treating them as projects, if you start treating them as entities that need to be prioritized against a common framework, then that's exactly where the PMO needs to come in and play.
Yeah, and I think it'd be AI is so exciting that you might just forget and bypass all of that because the natural instinct is, oh, we just want to throw this on, get it up and running tomorrow. So you end up bypassing all of the normal processes that we've all grown to appreciate and need to be successful.
Right. I just want outcomes for my department, Steve. I don't care about what other tools you're going to use, right? No, but I think that that's the principle, is that when we keep it in that view of, that team level, it's going to only reach that high level of goals. But when the PMO can become involved, now we're looking at organizational level, right? And how it can take that up higher. So,
well, and I guess if there's already a committee in play, it might make sense if, as PMO leaders, to say, hey, we'll help manage this project for you, or these set of projects, because I could totally see, like you said, if you don't do this, the CEO is going to say, he'll see an ad or something or read something and be like, oh, we need to have this yesterday, which happens on not just for AI projects, but all kinds of things.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the PMO can also offer to facilitate the sessions of the AI committee if it's not being done that, right? So not just say, okay, just give us what you have and then we'll take it from there, but rather let us help you figure out what it is that you want to do. And then, we'll sort of see what the ground realities are and we'll help you bridge that gap.
Definitely.
So when you're looking at all the things that the PMO can do, right? The first thing it starts off with what we really have, right? And that's where the intake comes in. So not just, okay, let's have a consistent one road into sharing with everyone what it is that we want to do. So to your point earlier, Steve and Matthew, is, do we really need to have what does that AI committee want, right? Maybe there's one intake that sort of helps AI committee see, well, what does everyone really need in the organization, right? But at the same time, well, what AI tools do we already have? There are a lot of different platforms, ERP, CRM, PPM, and other platforms that are out there that organizations are using, even that have started including AI as part of their roadmap and or already have licenses for them. Are we using them or not? Should we be using them? Should we be looking at something else? Even when organizations that have that are Google shops or Microsoft shops, they've got Gemini and Copilot.
Yeah.
Are they even using that? Right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people overlook the fact that if you're doing Office 365, you can just turn on some of these features already.
That's exactly right. That's
which,
exactly
I mean, most people have discovered that, but not everybody, I suppose. But I think the next level is, if your organization has turned on maybe your Office 365 Copilot, now what? Everyone right now, it seems like people are experimenting all over the place and casting a net around what is the company all doing. That might not be, if you have a very large organization, that might be a challenging thing to gather information on.
Yeah, the bigger the ship, the harder it is to control and rein in, right? And that's exactly the sort of conversations that I'm having with organizations where they've turned on the switch and now they're like waiting, scratching. What do we do? Sometimes it's as simple as an announcement to all the employees. Hey, now you have access to Copilot. Okay, great, fantastic. But Do they know what they want to do with it? How should they use it? What should they put in it? Sometimes there's just an attachment of do not include these things in Copilot,
Yeah.
such as
Customer
confidential,
data. I
proprietary
mean,
customer data. Exactly, exactly.
that's usually right on the top of the list.
That's right. That's right. And so, with that, people are sort of apprehensive. Will I get into trouble if I don't use this correctly? Has there been any sort of training that's been involved as part of that? But having said that, so many different organizations have so many different of these situations where I would say it's like an open invitation for the PMO to come in and say, well, I've got this. I can help with that. Let's start off with one department, 5 use cases. Will help your team with training, with um, uh, adoption, with change management. And this not to say that the PMO needs to do all of the work. It doesn't have to be the trainer. It doesn't have to be the expert in AI. It doesn't have to handhold. What it does need to do is it needs to find out, okay, well, who are the people who should be involved in this? Do we need folks from HR? Do we need folks from the training department, the L&D department? Do we need folks from the actual department that we're rolling up from who can identify change champions? And those are things that can really help, right? So that's something that we want to do in these situations. And so when it comes down to the intake process, we want to make sure that we've got that consistent form coming in and know what is being run, who is running it, why that's happening, and if there is a need for new items, new elements, then they get that as well, right? That's the intake right there. After that comes the main part, which is prioritization. Now, this is something that is an extremely fundamental rudimentary view that I'm sharing right now. But the idea is you've got to have a scoring model and you've got to identify what projects they are, what use cases they are, and score all of them at an apples to apples comparison, right? Now, the example that you see on the screen, meeting summaries and action tracking, what if scenario planning, those are pertinent to PMO's own work. But imagine having use cases from finance. Imagine having use cases from ops. Imagine having use cases from HR. Imagine having use cases or project lists from facilities. If you start combining all of these together from department to department and see this as an entity, that list of projects or use cases becomes massive, right? But you'll also see that some of these things will overlap, right?
Hmm.
Such as meeting summaries, for instance. Everybody wants to do that, right?
Yeah.
Portfolio tracking, only the PMO. What if scenario, only the PMO. But ultimately, every type of use case or project goes through the same lens. And that helps us prioritize what we want to do now versus a bit later, versus much later, right? And so once we have that and we have the list of what assets, what tools we actually have, which was as part of step one, then it becomes easy to see, well, can we actually do this with Copilot? Can we actually do this with Claude? Can we actually do this with Gemini? Can we actually do this with the ERP tools AI functionality? Do we need to invest something into something else? Right. And so instead of it becoming a haphazard, hopscotch uh, experiment slash pilot, now you're looking at a very cohesive, uh, consistent approach across the organization that is very determined in one focus, one direction, as well, and going to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
right? And so once we've gotten to the what, then we get into the how do we govern that what?
Yeah, and just real quick before you jump, there was a question
Yeah.
in there, does cost become a possible score? And I would assume so.
Well, I think that makes sense. Uh, cost, ability for people, capacity, and of
Yeah,
course the schedules. All of that matter, right? But like I said, this is a very high level scoring mechanism. We can certainly add cost into this. We can certainly add
yeah.
the expected level of effort.
Oh, for
You know,
sure.
even t-shirt sizing, high, medium, low.
Well, and what kind of risk does a certain intake,
Ex-
some are low risk,
Exactly.
and I'm assuming you want the high value, low risk, low cost should go first.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So put in your score, you're going to want to put what matters to your organization in that score.
That's exactly right. That's a great question, and thanks for
Yeah.
that call out there.
One of the ask of that also mentioned that some places are dropping tools because of cost, and I do think that is actually quite relevant right now. That if you
Yeah.
are going to take on this new initiative, if it's going to have a $10,000 annual reoccurring expense to it, let's now figure out how we can justify that. But all of that still stays to me in this same idea of who's best suited to do that? Me, the guy who's in charge of revenue, or the PMO who governs and moves
Yeah.
pieces forward, right? So,
Well, and I think getting back to if the cost, sometimes people do things just to do them because,
yes.
everyone's doing AI, so we need to do them. So we should have an AI project. But let's say you're doing something in AI and it costs way more than it's worth. Then just like any project that's going on that, you get in the middle of a project and you're not, you know, getting what you want out of it, ending or closing a project isn't bad project management. It's actually good management. If you implement some AI, it ends up not yielding the what you thought you would get out of it. Cancel that and do something different.
Yep.
With every prioritization, I think the challenging thing always is to know what to say no to, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the situation here is. The reality is that and something that I see a lot across the board for just general project prioritization is that it's all very loosey goosey, right? So there's very loose end connections to strategic fit. Um, there is benefits such as efficiency, um, effectiveness, increasing speed, um, but there is no. It seems to me like that's more of an apples to apples comparison. So think of an organization that has, a project that will increase, network speeds by 3 seconds, and the same organization has a project that will increase, revenue by, $1 million. How do you compare those two?
Yeah, it's hard to do.
It's hard to do, but it is possible,
Hmm.
right? And it's about how does that actually boil down into a certain level of metrics that will make it an apples to apples comparison. So to give you as an example, for the infrastructure example that I gave, well, it increases the network speed by 2 seconds. Okay, great. Now for that network speed by increase by 2 seconds, how does that benefit customers? Okay, and then because of that, how many customers can we project to have? So what is
Hmm.
the increased potential increase in revenue there? Additionally, because of that network infrastructure, maybe the uh, maintenance costs go down. So we've got additional cost benefits there, right? So
Hmm.
that added on compared to the $1 million in revenue as a project, now we can now see, okay, well, you know what? Now it's eye to eye. Now it's apples to apples. Can we now make a choice? And I think that's the step that organizations need to take in terms of really doing that proper project prioritization. And the same goes with AI use cases as well. And if it's just not use cases but AI projects as well. So irrespectively, I think we can sort of leave this at the point that don't think of the prioritization here as any different than you would prioritize your project portfolio.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's really a great advice there. Just that same
Yeah.
process, apply the same process you're doing for any new initiative, essentially.
Right. And in certain situations, it may make sense for your organization to have the exact same prioritization mechanism as it does for other projects. In some cases, it may matter that you may need to have a different prioritization mechanism, such as different risk factors that need to be thought through, such as the readiness factors, something that I've mentioned here, the data readiness, for instance,
Hmm.
right? If everything looks great but you're not ready, guess what? There's no point.
Yeah.
So, just as uh, an add-on to that, right? But irrespectively, the same amount of rigor and effort should be put into place to make this really worthwhile for the organization and for this to be more than a pet project and experiment, and becoming more focused on uh, capitalizing AI in the best
Yep.
way possible.
Okay, well, let's move to the governing.
Yeah, yeah. So once we've gotten through the prioritization, now it's all about, well, how do we make sure that this is governed in the way that it should be managed? Do we have the right people in the room to help us through all of that? Do we need legal and compliance? Do we need the risk entities coming to play? Do we need to be worried about IT capabilities and our uh, organizational security? Do we know who the data owners are for some of these places? The people who are pitching in uh, to do this sort of AI work, the business sponsors, is it a wish list? Have they tied it to a real organizational need or not? So once we've sort of ascertained the prioritization, we can now look at this next lens and see which entities, which initiatives, which projects, which use cases filter through that and get through it, right? Because once we get into the delivery, we don't want to be down into midway to execution, realizing that we needed, some of these things in place before any of it, right? So think of it as more of as uh, getting ready, or rather planning before the execution.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, like, just quick question, you need to do these questions for each initiative you're going to do, right? Because maybe one AI project has a whole different set of people than another.
That's
So is
exactly
that
right.
true? Okay. Yeah.
That's exactly right. And also, the intensity of the people that were being brought in can vary where you are in the AI journey, right? So, for instance, if you're talking about, let's just start using Copilot to um, write better meeting minutes, or to write better emails, or to look at our existing documentation and come up with summaries. Um, do we need to have risk exposures? Do we need to be worried about ID security? Maybe not, right? So the amount of use cases and the nature of use cases will also help us determine what do we need to really invest into all of these, into some of these, right? If it's internal facing, uh, uh, individual use, probably you don't need a whole lot of guardrails in. But if it is internal facing, and sort of reflects on people's performances, helps us with assessments, then we need a bit more guardrails. If we now are looking at impacting, clients, customers that are external, vendors that are involved, then we need to start again extending the set of guardrails that we need to have. So yes, I think that it does need to vary from project to project, but even with the nature of use cases coming in, I think it makes sense to see, well, do we really need to have all of these things like going in parallel as we're prioritizing? Or once the prioritization is done, then we'll take a look at it from a project to
Yeah.
project basis.
Well, I would think that how much governance is required for an AI initiative should be something that you would incorporate in your prioritization. Low governance. I mean, to me, almost governance and risk kind of are synonyms with each other to some degree. But
That's right.
if one initiative takes low governance, then it's going to be low cost basically, because more governance would mean more human cost to you, at least resource requirement.
That's right, as well as the extended time for the due diligence.
Right. But maybe when you start governing, you should create a questionnaire for yourself to ask. You just kind of rattled off what those questions were like a minute ago. Is it internal only? Is it per personal use only? How does it affect more systems? Does it affect the clients? That you would want to use the same checklist for each initiative so that you're aligning, don't forget one.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. And I see in the comment that Keith mentioned AI is business benefits realization management, and I think what he's trying to say is just with any sort of project, digital transformation project, regular project, you get it through execution, and then the so what, right? There was a
Yeah.
business case that was
Right.
created for it. It outlined certain benefits for the organization. Now, after the execution is done, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year later, did we realize the benefits, right? And that's exactly the same principle that we want to apply for our AI use cases
Mhm.
initiatives. If we're looking at increasing productivity, how will we measure it? How will we get the data for it? How often will we report it? When can we expect to see it? And then is it happening, right? And
Mhm.
if we're short, how do we manage that? Similarly, for all different projects, right? And so who is housing that? And is that the PMO? Is that the business units? If it is the business units, then who is holding them accountable for it? Is it the PMO? Is it the chief AI officer? And so that really needs to be thought through. And again, an opportunity but for the PMO to raise its hand up and say, you know what, I can help you with that.
Great. Let's
That
move
makes
on to the
sense.
delivering.
Yes. So this is something that I don't think I need to talk much about. It's This is something that's right in the wheelhouse of all PMOs, getting things done, right? So treat your pilots that come through as projects. What that means is have a scope, have a timeline, have a budget, have success metrics, have an adoption plan, and lean on through that, and then
Yeah.
report back to see what the lesson learned is, and then can we actually now take this and move beyond the pilot into full on rollout during the execution,
Yeah. And
right?
I think there's a really great point you make too. Given the fact that AI is so hot and everything, I think a lot of organizations are skipping this part of it, or, you know, you just get so excited that you don't actually put the scope around there, or the schedule and the budget. And this is where, like you mentioned earlier in the whole conversation, that the PMO should just try to assert yourself here to help ensure that these deliveries are successful.
That's exactly right. And to our example earlier on, Steve, you mentioned turning on let's say Copilot for Microsoft Office for Microsoft entities, right? Uh, Great. What does that adoption plan look like? And is it going to vary for resources in the project management department? Is the expectation different for people in the operations department versus finance department versus in the executive office? And who is controlling that? Who's managing that? And is the change management piece only as simple as an email that sends out, hey, now you have access and here's the what to do and what not to do? Or do we need more on it? Right. And so imagine the amount of licensing fees that is going out for that.
I know,
And
especially if they're not using it.
then nobody's using it. That's exactly right.
Or what you're using it for is not really beneficial.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So that's really what all delivery is about, right? And then once we've gotten that going, you start repeating it for every entity, every project that you've gotten, right? And it's a simple sort of a a situation where you either adopt what you already have, or you're okay to buy what you were piloting, and now you can go ahead and start getting more licenses for it, or none of those work and you need to build something custom, right? And so ultimately that becomes your repeatable engine. And the opportunity, like I said earlier, for PMO is to sort of run this on themselves first, get really good at it, and then start rolling it out and helping other
Mhm.
organizations do the same. Other departments within the organization do the same for themselves, right? And so, like I said earlier, some of the use cases for PMOs for AI, include portfolio intake, what if scenarios, automated status reporting, early warning risks. But some of these can be applicable to other entities as well, right? Other departments within the organization. But I know that this is extremely, extremely tangible and something that a lot of PMOs can benefit from. So I know Matthew and Steve, Project Insight can do some of this as well. So would love to see what you've gotten there for us to see over there.
Yeah, we're going to take your advice here in this example, and we're going to stop the wild west of AI, and I'm going to rein it in as the PMO leader, right? So what I did was I spent 5 minutes configuring a new portfolio and new programs within Project Insight. So that way on my project intake request, which is what we're looking at right here, I can choose AI portfolio and then the corresponding programs underneath it. In this instance, I'm doing a pilot, right? This is my idea. Steve and I are about to have a governance meeting, and he said if I can get this meeting in, we can evaluate if we can start it in October when I'm wanting to kick this thing off. We took Hussein's advice and I put in some value and approach questions that pop up specifically on my AI questionnaire. So now I can say, I'm trying to reduce this by 25% or whatever that looks like. I'm doing this on all of my intakes and all of my active projects so I can actually measure the value that I'm trying to gain. I also took it one extra step and built a scorecard into Project Insight based off of a few of the pieces that we have. So in that way, I can score this myself as we go through this process. And I'm going to submit this, and let's see, Steve, do you think I'm going to be able to get this project in? So I just sent that in. That can go through a governance process where we actually go through like approvals, where I can get legal involved or portfolio directors if we want to. Or it will end up right here on this report. We're going to have one additional piece here for that one that I just put in. And now it's governance time. So I'm on my intake report. I can see all of the different pieces. I can look at these against one another. So in that way, we can have those really candid discussions on if this is not a direct relation to dollars and cents, how can I move it to that? Or how can I move it to efficiency? Or how can we get on the same page with the sensitivity or any of these kind of pieces that you might be tracking? We tried to make it really simple and take Hussein's approach and use scorecard. So I'm going to just simply sort by score and say, hey, I want the highest score with the highest priority. And it looks like that's going to be Mason's project here, who's going to beat my project that had a score of 6 out. So I'm going to sadly cry under my desk and watch as we move this project forward, right? So I have the ability now to connect that to an existing project plan, or I can create a net new one within Project Insight.
Right. Hopefully you would have this all templatized so that way you don't have to just start from scratch for each one of these.
I was just going to go with that, Steve. I have an AI template that I can use when I go to create this project, right? And it's my AI plan. And that's going to get all of the relevant stakeholders involved immediately. So that way we can all sign off and move this project forward if we wanted. Now, in the event that maybe I don't know what this AI project plan is going to look like, Project Insight can come in and actually help generate my task list with AI. So now AI is helping me develop my AI plan, right? But in this way, I now know what I need to do with the appropriate resources, and I don't have to have that burden to think about that. This is especially important for an initiative like this where maybe we're wanting lots of participants from the organization to share how they think these will happen. I might not have the strong project management skills, but I can still get a very strong WBS out because of Project Insight. Otherwise, I'm going to just run my project. It's going to look very similar to any active project within our tool as a whole, where I can assign tasks, I can assign resources, I can execute on the work as we go through. So in that way, I can keep track of all of my resource allocations for my portfolios. And I know that my engineers are clearly going to be burdened with some of this AI implementation stuff that we see here. And then when Steve, toward the end of the year says, hey, how much did you spend on this AI initiative? I don't have to do anything else. Project Insight allows me to compartmentalize by my portfolio, by the programs, and all I simply have to do is just roll over and say, hey, Steve, I'm going to spend about $165,000 this year on the AI initiatives, okay? So please don't sweat me out on that.
Well, I mean, a lot of times half the battle is just, getting the data organized.
Well, it is. I mean, and I think the key, though, is that now I can show you the value of what that monetary piece is, like Hussain was saying, right? It's not just an abstract of bucket of spend. These are the projects I'm working on, Steve. These are my AI, my portfolio. You can see why we took these projects because we had high scores. You can see what we're targeting and by what metrics we're trying to see these improvements happen. If you want to see how we're actually performing over time, I can go through the various portfolio views pre-built in Project Insight and give you updates readily on anything from, what is the health of all of your projects, down to the granularity of what's happening on each individual task in each project, in each program, right? So it's really a lot of option on what you want to see. But the key here is I, as the PMO leader, took the initiative to come into Project Insight and say, I need to create a new portfolio, and it's going to be this because we're going to keep track of it as the PMO team. So, yeah, if you want to flip it back to your deck, you can, Hussain. I know we're tight on time.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah,
you can
thanks,
also
Matt. That was great. That was great. I mean,
yeah, that was awesome. Thank you,
yeah, I
Matthew.
mean, getting out of spreadsheets and getting in online is so helpful because now that data is, collaborative from everybody. That request intake, you can publish it to everybody in your organization. You don't actually have to have a user account to be able to submit the ideas.
That's a good call out, Steve, actually.
And once the projects are done, when somebody's asking, well, why did we do the project and what benefit do we see? You can go back to this and say, well, here you go.
I don't have to build an abstract of anything. I can quantify it right here, right? I can even have my results for, I said I wanted to achieve 25%. I only achieved 20. I had a 5% gap if I even wanted to display that as you go through here. But none of this in the tool is possible, without me taking the reins as far as that's concerned. One question, Hussain, that was, came out as we went through is, maybe I was late to the jump, right? I think of dodgeball, right? We're all running to the AI to grab it and take ownership, right? And maybe another department beat us out to it, or maybe the CEO said, hey, let's give it to the IT team. What would be a strong argument that I can make as a PMO leader to why I should have the take on this portfolio of governance?
I think you can go ahead and show feedback on how much you are actually taking care of the portfolio prioritization right now, and the governance of the entire portfolio outside of AI. And if you are, and if you're not even doing that, then I think it makes the ask for just doing it for AI a bit more difficult. But if you've already shown credibility and credence in the fact that you're governing the entire portfolio outside of AI, then AI is just an extension of it. And the same sort of guardrails and benefits realization is what you need. And ultimately, it's going to come down to the benefits, right? And so is the technology team really privy to be able to go ahead and convert that from tech jargon into business benefits that the executive want to hear, well, the PMO has demonstrated that it can. So it just makes sense to sort of extend that responsibility to it.
That makes sense. Do you have any takeaways we can walk away with that help me get this under play?
I sure do. So we've got we've got a playbook sheet that we're going to be giving out to everybody that people can capitalize on and use that as well. So quickly sharing that right now, I want to go ahead and talk about this takeaway that everybody will get over email. It's called the PMO AI Governance Starter Kit. It'll talk about the 5 moves that we talked about. I know we talked about 3 use cases earlier. I've got 10 use cases in here that people can look at from a PMO perspective. And they'll also have a pretty simple assessment on, is the PMO AI ready, or does it need to do some work? So that's something that it's going to be doing as well. So I think folks will be expecting that in email after the workshop.
Wonderful.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that with everybody.
I think the other one is that, participants will also then have the opportunity to work with you directly, right? For that 2-hour complimentary session that was just up as well. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So for those folks who are interested in sort of doing a bit of a deep dive into, well, what does it look like to have our use cases identified, or any conversation around AI in terms of sort of maybe thinking about how do you prioritize, what sort of AI lifecycle should we create? We don't even know what use cases to start off with. Can you help us with that? I'm offering a 2-hour complimentary working session with your PMO team or anyone else from within your organization to be able to go ahead and capitalize on that. Absolutely.
Spectacular. That's great. To either join with Hussain or to do independently, we at Project Insight are also offering, of course, the ability to capture that intake, that portfolio, any of those pieces, right, that we do all right off the shelf, right out of the box within the Project Insight application as well. So reach out to myself or sales@projectinsight.com and we'll work with you on getting those pieces deployed for your organization. Now to the exciting scan part. If everybody gets your phones out, you can get your PDU ready to go. Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. You will receive your link before, your PDU credit, before the end of the week. Leave that up for just another second, and then you can join Steve and myself next week somehow. Steve, I think is when this is coming up, our power tutorial on aligning projects to strategy as far as that's concerned, right? So we're talking about our portfolio, our strategic project views. I'm really looking forward to diving through that. So please do join.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Hussain, thank you so very much. We really appreciate it. Please follow us on social. You'll see collaboration with our wonderful partners like Hussain and others, and can stay up to date on other information that's happening within Project Insight. Again, thank you, Hussain. Thank you, Steve. To everyone who joined, we appreciate you. Have a great day, all.
We have a QR code. One wants the QR code one more time.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. Been there.
Yeah, get your PDUs, everybody.
And thank you so much, Steve, Matthew, everyone from Project Insight. This was fantastic. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, great job.
And great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.